By the end of the 20th century, Hemond's Dairy of Minot was one of the largest and most respected dairies in central Maine. Its owner, Roland Hemond, had received recognition throughout Maine and New England for his accomplishments. In today's interview, you will hear some of the struggles that led to that success. Roland's father, Alphonse Hemond, was born in Canada. Most of the time, the family, including the 7 children, spoke only French. Before the Great Depression, which began with the stock market crash of 1929, Alphonse Hemond had been the operator and owner of a large dairy in Lewiston. He processed and delivered the milk which was brought to him by other farmers. During the Depression, Alphonse had to sell his dairy at a loss. In 1932, he moved his family to Minot, where he first began to raise cows. Roland remembers many of the details of the financial hardships they faced during the Depression. The Hemonds were the first French Catholic family in Minot and have contributed their talents to the town of Minot in many ways.
My name is Roland Hemond, and I was born in Lewiston, and my January 31st, 1921, I was out of a family of 7, but my father was out of a family of 7 too. He came from Canada. My mother came from Lewiston, and she was out of a family of 16. And with my early days, my father owned a milk business on College Street in Lewiston, known as the largest dairy in the Lewiston area. And into growing up, I was always interested what they were doing into the dairy. I can recall one time they were fixing a piece of equipment, and I got into it at a wrong spot. And when I got in, they started up, and it so happened there was a bottle washer, and the sticks that came around and pushed the cases in came around and picked up my head and crashed it up against the sink. And I can remember all the excitement of backing it up and picking me up and bring me into the house. And that's all I know. My head is swole up, so that's probably what has happened all through these years. And as we grew up, the dairy into the morning, I can remember so well. At first, I had 3 sisters, both younger than I was, that went to private school, and John was my older brother. He was in a private school too. And I was one that never wanted to leave home. They never could convince me to go away. John was in Canada. So actually I knew more of what was happening to what my father was doing. Now in the morning he used to process milk and bottle milk, but he didn't have no cows. He bought all the milk. And in the morning he used to get me up at 6 o'clock and help him to remove the bottles. I was probably about 9, 10 years old, put a case to stand on off the filler. And then he would take us to school. Well, talking about school, my first day of school was at the Pettingill School on College Street. Was brand new. First year it opened. But John and I both started there together, but it did not last very long because we didn't know nothing about English language. We was French. So I can't remember just how long we stayed there, but we landed finally at St. Peter's School on Blake Street, which was a large Catholic school, as I mentioned, a 48 classroom, and I can remember we had about 1,300 boys on one side of on Blake Street. Bates Street was a girls' side. Nuns were teaching school, and we had to ride back home at noontime for lunch, but in the afternoon we walked back. It was a little over 2 miles, and we were very tiny at the time. And so this is where I first learned about maybe the dairy business, which became very useful. This is all I ever done all my life. And in 1932, there's tragic things happened to my father's business, so he got out of it and into the fall of 32, we moved, or they moved in Minot, but they packed me one with my aunt into the city on the 4th floor. Well, you want to think that I wasn't too enthused about that, because we had nothing to do, and there was no radio around there, there was no television, there was two other, which were cousins of mine. And when Christmas vacation came, of course, came home on farm. My mother was very lonesome. They'd been living there about 6 weeks then. She did not enjoy it. There was a cold farmhouse. Fuel, wood was very scarce around there. There was nothing. And so and when they bought the farm, that's through Depression now. And there was, I can remember very well, my father knew nothing about. He was brought up on a farm in Canada. When he left there, he was young, but he knew very little about cows. But somehow he felt so he was going to manage. But this was through Depression, and we was getting anywhere between 2 and 3 cents a quart for milk if you could find a milk market. So we was taking care, selling the milk to the place he had sold the dairy to down to the city. And the amount of milk was a very small amount. I can remember, I think, 2 5-gallon cans twice a day at 2 cents a quart. My goodness, what did that give you? 40, 80, less than $1 a day. Well, anyway, in the meantime, I'll come back to my schooling. Then, when I was ready to go back to school after the January 1st, which would have been in 33 now, and I put quite a show on. As I mentioned before, I was the only one, and the 2 youngest one were too young to go to school. And I also, when we came out there was quite a lot of excitement into the railroad due to there was a French family moving in with 7 kids going to school. That was not very acceptable. But when they found out that I was the only one going to school, so anyway, I walked into Vero School. I can remember that just like yesterday. It was Mrs. Virginia Emery, which turned out later years to be Mrs. Brown, when she taught school for a long time in Mechanic Falls. And there was no communication whatsoever. So finally, somehow, I must have come across, because in the later years, I went to her home once and just was curious to see what was the reaction after all these years. And we was talking about it, and she'd say, I get in there and I'd look at you, and I'd say, what am I going to do? But believe it or not, it came. She said, within a month's time, that I got things backwards a lot, because French could be the opposite way a little bit. But it was quite, and by the way, I was in the 4th grade then. And so then the following year, after that, we had a different teacher. I'd like to mention that. It was, this next one here was Mabel Hammond, which she finally married a Campbell, which lived in Mechanic Falls. And all through my life, I always knew her, even though when I left school. I'd like to mention at this time, when the father sold a dairy to Sunrise Dairy, another company, in 32. In 36, he had to repossess the dairy. So we had to move back downtown. Somebody stayed on the farm. And it lasted just a short time, and he had another party was interested. So he sold it to this party, which lasted just a little over 30 days. So then we had to remove back down there again. And when we removed down there in 1936, I don't like to brag about this. 32, 3, 4, 5. I was anyway in the 7th grade at Vero School, and I didn't want to go back to school in the city. And this is all the schooling I've had in my life. Not even got through the 7th grade. From there, when we went back in town, my father had put me, I was 15 then, on the truck, on a small route, I can remember, which made it very difficult. And We stayed there, and then finally in this spring of '38, he resold the whole thing, the house and the dairy went to another company, and we came back on the farm, and that was for good. Father, into 19, I guess think back now, about 36, we were back and forth. At this period of time, we was on the farm up here, and he had to have an operation, so he had to go to the hospital. If I recall right, we was milking sometime around there, 15 to 18 cows, and I was going to the barrel school, and believe it or not, before I went to school, I had to do chores. There probably was 20 some odd heads, and milk the cows, and he was gone for 2 weeks. We never heard from him because we had no telephone, couldn't afford it. And I can recall that in the winter, sometime water was frozen, and it was an awful responsibility for a boy of my age to be able to do this all by myself. My mother, and then in the family it was the two youngest, George and Andy. In those days, it's just I just cannot forget that. Well, anyway, coming back to the Vero School, I'd like to mention a little bit more. This, as you know, boys grow older. Sometimes they get so they think they know it all. And so one day I was doing some spelling lesson, and this was with Mrs. Hammond, the second teacher. I think that, I can't remember if I was in the 6th or 7th grade. Well, anyway, so I didn't do too well in the spelling, and she looked at me and she said, "You're going to stay after school." Well, I was thinking about my band work I had to do home, and so I stayed after school, and we had these seats bolted down, alleys, country school. So I was getting very itchy, and all at once I decided I was going home. She was sitting on the desk up there on the other end, but so I got out the seat in the alley. Somehow, with my excitement, I tripped, and I went down as solid on the floor as I could. And I went through that door at high speed and headed up the hill and changed my clothes and headed for the band. Well, I was cleaning out the band, and the door opened. But who was there? The teacher. And she made sign to me. And I said, "Oh, boy." First thing I thought about my mother. And so I followed back her down the road, and she gave me the spelling word, which I did, and then now she said, "You go home." She wanted to point out one thing, that she was in charge, and that she wasn't going to let me get away from that because she knew I could do better than that. This is something you don't forget. And so coming back to this Vero School, there is, there was so much difference going to a school with so little, and then leaving a school with so much activity.
You mentioned your milking. Now, when you were on the farm out here, you were milking by hand, weren't you?
No, we did have a milking machine.
You did?
Yeah, up there where we lived, where we landed there, what's so-called a Perkin place, whatever it is. Yeah, it was, but after the girls came back in the summer and we settled down, we was milking a little more cows, then we stopped using the machine and milking by hand due to save electricity because it was depression, it was just no money. Well, I furnished the water to the school, hauled it down in a sleigh in the winter, Vero School, and I wasn't a janitor. And then I went down and lit the stove early in the morning, and I got 25 cents a week for each one of them. So that was quite a lot of money them days. And it was a big changeover for me. And
you said the Perkins farm. Now, is that the farm where Johnny
lives there? Yeah. Because see, when Father bought there, the Willettes owned that, but they owned that just for 1 year. And the Perkins was in there for 10 years. And reading back, Perkins also was road commissioner for the town of Minot at one. We're reading history back along. When we was on College Street, we was young boys, we have ideas. And this here, this guy, friend of my folks, came and wanted to store his car for the winter. And so he, as I get into that, we had a stable there. When Father had that, he kept his father's 9 horses in there. They used to deliver milk with horses, but I cannot remember all of that. Then he had a pair of horses that would go pick up milk onto the farms. And in the winter they used sleigh. And anyway, there was this tie-up was nothing was left in it, and he stored his car underneath that. Well, my brother and I, maybe somebody else, and the car was locked. Now, for what reason they locked the car, I don't know. But we boys was determined to find a way to get in there. Well, it was not easy. It was made one attempt, and I was the one that finally, through the floorboard, between the handbrake and the shifting lever, I was able to squeak to get into the car. So we had it made. We unlocked the car in the glove compartment. There was the old Albert tobacco, and then there was a plastic pipe, and we were interested in what this was all about. Well, but what furthermore came along, we opened the gutter on top, and we would throw stuff on, and something we shouldn't have done onto the car. And there was some lime around. I don't know where it came from. We threw that on there. So I'll tell you, this was a disaster for this guy. So one day in the spring, we saw this man drive in to get his car. It was a 4-door car. And we was out of sight in a hurry. This man came out, you think he hit a bad storm. But it's just thing to know that it happened in childhood. Now we will go back when we was on a farm. So when we settled down, that time was about 37, 38. At one time, and through the period there, after Father sold the dairy, he started a small dairy. And I remember when we had the bad flood, was it 36 or something like that?
36, because it's
Yeah, the all McCann floor was flooded. And that's when he started small to deliver the milk we raised on the farm, hopefully that he could get a little more on that. And he knew enough people he dealt with, which it worked out all right. He built up, and he used to leave early in the morning. But in the evening, that's when we used to do the work in the dairy. And I can remember that, we worked all day outside, and when we do that, and I've seen time, but 8:30, 9 o'clock, we was in there working. I can recall we were so tired. That's all, we was just growing up boys, and it was just lots of hard work. And another episode I can remember on the farm at that same age, that one day they harnessed a horse on a tether. It was a mare. Should have been out of the barn that day. And my feet were not long enough to reach the floor of the tether. It's one of those that had these prongs on there.
Yeah.
We went in the back field, and the horse started galloping around. Well, to hang on to the seat, I had to let go of the reins or fall off when I had no choice, because the legs weren't long enough. So anyway, cut the story short, the reins went down and she took off, and I'll tell you one thing, the pieces flew, and we went around the circle, and that field was right behind the man where Mac Pulsifer lived there. There was a house, it's gone now, and that house going around the circle. I was hollering murder, because I knew if I fell off, that'd be I don't know where it would landed, but Max, after 2 or 3 tries, the horse come around, he finally jumped and caught her by the head and stopped her. And I thought my father was going to about kill me when he heard about that. We should have been glad I was still alive, but that's just another thing that you don't forget. And now going back, the farm grew. After we sold down there, then we was hauling our own milk into Hoods and Auburn, and then we've grown up to, at home there, was milking 40 to 50 cows in that range. And things were looking a little better, price increased, and we're talking now in the 1938. And the early, 37, 38. Because 38, something else happened. In the spring of 38, in March, this man that lived here, Amby Damon, came up to the house. Well, he knew of us because in the fall of the year, we had a tractor. He had the inch cutter. And we came down here and finished the power, and then we took his inch cutter and went up there. That's how tight money was. Today, you'd think nothing of it. And so he got acquainted with us, and in that spring, he needed some help. So he came up the house, and by that time John was pretty well outside of high school, and the family had come out of a private school. And he wanted to know if he could spare one of the boys. Well, the only boy that didn't go to school was me. So I can remember I was standing in the yard, and my father said, yes, if you want to go work. And I was kind of interested a little bit because there was no money. And after all, I was like 17 by that time. We put figures together. And not going to school, I ran into another problem. Couldn't see no girlfriend. Right? You had high school, that's when it starts. And I was 17, and one day I can remember we was cleaning the loft, getting ready to put the hay in. That must have been in the year before that. And I had told my father, I said, you know what? All we do around here, we clean this up, we'll fill this barn full of hay, and then in the spring we'll haul the manure out, and we do the same thing every year. So you could see my courage was not good. And if we had something way up high on a hay fork or something to work on, I was the one to go up there, and sometimes I did not like it, but somehow I did some of this stuff. Well, anyway, so I came down to work here. I had to walk about a mile and a half, be here at 5 o'clock in the morning. But also, a little bit before that, Maud Thomas had some cows up there, and I had landed there and stayed there with her at night because she was scared. And I had built these jerseys in the morning, so I didn't do this too long. I think I did that just about 2 months. And to be here at 5 o'clock, so I had got real early to build. They had to be built by hand. And so I came down here, and I had to be here by 5 and worked in the barn. And but I was not quite happy what I was doing. So it wasn't too long, as I said, I quit the job I had up there. I lost $2 a week up there, but I was getting $10 a week here. I can remember the second time they paid me, I put the money in my dresser, and they usually a $5 bill every week. I'd add up, see how many there was, because hey, I had money then. And not that my father didn't want to pay us, but it just was not enough to go around. And so I stayed here for till about June, it was something like that, and then I had put an application at the Hood Company in Lewiston, somehow Auburn, and I had a job there. And I went to work there, I believe, in June, and in August, this man here wanted to see me, and at the time we had a route of milk business here, and he had wanted to know if I'd come back and work on the milk truck and not have to milk cows, but did a little bit around the barn, whatever has to be done. So I thought quite a lot, and I decided to come back and work for him. And accidentally, he was sick of cancer, and Amby Damon was a very nice man to work for. And in February of that year, he died, and the place came for sale in the spring, and somebody else bought it. And no, I would have liked to at the time, but I didn't have a wife, and I missed a good pat here a minute ago, and so I had to go along. Now, I want to tell you one thing. Back in 38, in the fall of 38, this is very important now, we had horses, and them horses had to be shod. We had no telephone. The blacksmith didn't have no telephone either, but he lived in Poland. So one Sunday night, my mother said, we have to go over and tell the blacksmith, Mr. Furlan was the blacksmith, and that he had come and shoot the horses. So why it went that way, I don't know. But we landed over there, over to the Furlan, south here on Hardscrabble in Poland, and so the two mothers knew themselves as they grew up, so there was nothing, so they were all tee-heeing away, and they headed for the house. Of course, I stayed in the truck. And this Mrs. Furlan says, "You're coming in too." So I'm very shy, so I walked in the house, and the first thing I did, grab a chair, sit close to the door. But that wasn't the idea. She says, "You belong out there in the other room." And this lady was standing there, with, that means, so you go
Take care of him.
and that was the beginning of, because of it, we used to see in church some. They used to sit the further side. She says she used to eye us up because John and I was always together. But John was a little smaller than I was. But John, he was lucky. He went through high school. I don't know, he had, through his career, he went through more girls than I did. And that was my only, that was, no, but did make it easy to communication. When I left that night, I said, "Well, I'll send you a letter." And so I imagine she was desperate to hear from me. She had no boyfriend either. And so I asked her if she would go out with them days. The old place we went was to a theater. Empire Theater was a big item. And we landed there. And that's all when all this started. Yeah. But through, we recorded for 2 years. And the only time I could go, my father said, "Well, we can't drive too much on account." The money was tight. No telephone. There was a lot of love between the two of us, but just every 2 weeks. 1 week was Saturday and 1 week was Sunday. So, and that lasted that way almost to the wedding day, which was September 2nd, 1940. You were wondering if I could remember.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, this was one big item in my life. And so, I don't know, at this time here, where we're
Well, now we're married.
Now we're married.
But you didn't tell her name.
Oh, yeah. Her name was Noella Furlan. And Noella Furlan, as odd as it was, she was very good in school. She graduated the first of her class at Poland School because that was the only one in that 8th grade. I should let her say
No,
that.
go ahead.
And then she wanted to go to high school where her older brother, Leo, went to high school. But they were quite religious people, and is that all right for me to say this? That Leo said it's not a place for a girl in high school. Now, you'll have to say the name of the teacher, his teacher school.
Bertha Millett, which was Bertha Yetton later on. She taught at the Verrill School
yes.
also. But I went to school at Minot Connor where Alice Frank taught school. But I was only there until the 4th grade. And then we went to the Hardscrabble Road School where Mrs. Millett taught school there. But that picture up there was my 8th grade graduation.
But then the teacher got books for her, so she made the
Made the
9th
9th grade there.
at school.
At school. She got books
Yeah.
for me.
So, and she, let's put it that way, educated herself through the year because she's been a very good bookkeeper. Then when I left, came back and worked here, as I mentioned, to this tanner. Stayed here for a year. He was very slow learning, and so the following spring, I had made contact with a guy that worked for Nissan, was foreman in Mechanic Fall, a fellow named Quinn. He said, "We need a driver for the Biddeford route." Well, that sounded all right. He says, "A lot of French down there, and you'd fit just right." I said, okay, so I gave my notice here, and I went to Nissan in Portland and get on, and the day never to forget, because I never went back. That was the end of that. So that left me kind of without work, and we was living at a time where John lives up on that house up there, and on the Bell Road. So I wasn't long. I had the paper. I worked for White Home as delivering in Auburn, but that did not last till probably about 2 months. And I put an application back in the Hood Company where I'd been there before. But I was so young, I was 20 years old and 21, something like that. And I went in there and put an application, and within 2 weeks, they called me in. And then I stayed there, and I had a lot of experience, which came useful later. I went there as can washer. At the time, the ice cream department was on the 3rd floor, so there was a lot going on in this place. And I knew one thing: it was to work on a farm. It's you work or else. And in there all of us was quite young, in the 40s through the draft. I had gone for my physical, so I passed. John and I both, and so as I worked in there through that summer, and getting late summer, it was time vacation. So I knew about everything was going on in there, because I get my work done, I go help somebody else, and whatever it was shipping or running a glass filler or into the process pasteurizing room. And so the boss put me on to run a vacation. And as I said, when I went in there, my first pay was $20 a week, but I get $19.73. The rest was Social Security from 73 to 20. So you can see Social Security was not too large at the time. But to tell you how shy I was, I had worked at the Hood Company 3 weeks. They hadn't paid yet. So I asked somebody, I said, when do we get paid? And he said, you got to go upstairs in the sales office, get the check. And this woman said, I was wondering if you were ever going to show up. Then I knew where to go. But coming back, anyway, I went in, worked a vacation for each one of them. Then I get on to the night shipping. That's putting out routes. We had, I think it was 21 routes at Hood's Head. And so I had a very nice boss in there. And after I'd been in one night, I had to be there at 12 till 8 in the morning. And in the fall of the year, one man could do it, but in the summer it had to be 2 of us. And so he asked me one morning as I was leaving if how I was making out. Well, I said, I can't be glad another week's over, and that more was said. But a couple mornings later, he planned to be there while I was still there. And he said he'd like to keep me on that night job. Well, at that time, I had climbed up to $32 a week. And I hated to ask him if I was going to earn more money by taking this job. And he said, I'll double your pay. I said, I'll take it. So this is where really I got started in the finance end of it, because I had to go in at midnight. Then in the spring, had more to do. I had come in at 10 o'clock, couldn't get no helpers. The help was so tight, and I could do it all. And I've seen time, but then I could do anything there was to do. So it was short of help, even though I worked all night. And the boss would ask me if I could help him, and I've seen time I'd leave the house at my goodness, 9:30 at night. I'd come back.
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
But I was always
Making a lot of money for them.
making money.
Yes, but
And I love every bit of it till one day I couldn't get no more deferment. And John was left from the Navy, and my father was all alone. And we lived up above there. We had 3 kids. So I quit my job with tears and went back on the farm. And what did we get up there? You tell them.
Yeah, $25 every 2 weeks when the milk check came. And he left a over $100 a week job. But there was no choice.
Every 2 weeks. But we never complained.
No.
We just, Father used to do the book work. Okay. So then we went back. As I left the company, I started farming on my own, cows, because Father had sold a place, auctioned off, and John had a place full of chickens. So John, by that time, the chicken went, and John didn't leave from the Navy a little after that. Yeah. Well, anyway, we went all farming together, 3 of us. And that's what we just get, $25.
Every 2 weeks.
$50 a month. And so that,
with 3 children.
Yeah.
yeah. And Well, one thing I would like to mention, I did talk to you about the family. I would like to mention, when I was working nights, we lived up there, the Pulsford place, way up here on the road there. I don't know if you had never heard there was a place there. You must. Well, anyway, my car hated to start. It was about 10 below zero. And so I hesitated a little bit, and then she came out, was kind of landing, and she says to me, she says, you better take me to my mother. Because she was expecting, she said, I think things are going to be happening before morning. Of course, I left there was no phone, and they're just walking to the neighbor. That's all it was. So good thing the car was slow starting. So I waited, and she got dressed, and had a little baby girl, a year old, Lucille. So I dropped her off at her mother.
That was about 12 o'clock, and Jane was born at 4 o'clock in the morning. My father took me down to the hospital. Very, very slippery morning, and I can remember seeing him holding on to the wheel like this, and I was holding on to the seat. Yeah, you don't forget them days, you know. No.
Yeah. We get married in 40, and in January 5th of 42, Lucille was born at home.
On River Street.
River Street, and yeah, I missed out on that. When we left here, went and worked to the city. After we married, she worked in the shoe shop, and I worked at Hood's, so we moved down in front of Edwin Little High School on Main Street in Auburn, right next to the railroad track, 2-room apartment. And the car was parked in the garage way out the other way, so I always walked to work. And, we just had one car. And then we left there, we moved on River Street. You know where that is? Right in front of the church on the 4th floor. And then she stopped working, of course. And then we moved there in October, and the other place we moved there in the spring. And then January 5th, she gave
Lucille was
born at home at a cost of the doctor
$25.
$25. I say that today it costs in the hundreds when they go.
Yes.
Yeah. And well, anyway, then when we move in the country,
February 1st.
yeah, because
Lucille was just 1 month old.
Yeah.
When we moved out Pulsifer place.
Yeah. And it was 10 below zero. It was so cold. Nobody lived in the house for years.
Oh,
And we ate, and the shavings came down from the ceiling insulation. I had a woman that, I don't know.
But believe it or not, Lucille was never sick.
Yeah. Now, coming back to the family, that Lucille was born January 5th, 1942. Jane was born February 5th,
January 5th, 1943.
1943. And then,
Roland was born March 30th, 1944. Rosalie was born September 19, 1945.
in this house,
Here.
in the Carter room, here.
There's only, as long as this house has been here, there's only been 2 that's been born in this house.
Rosalie and.
And
There was Mr. Hodge, used to
Hodge,
be a
the
McNess
McNess
man. Years
Ah,
he came here.
he was in his 80s, and he had heard that somebody was born in this house, and he wanted to make sure.
Now you keep on going.
And okay, now after
Big Sonny Roland Jr.
Roland Jr., he was born
May 9th.
May 9th, 1947. And then Richard was born October 1st, 1950. Then Bobby was born, or Robert was born September 27th, 1951. Then Rita was born April 4th, 1955. And then there was a big slip. Anne was born October 4th, 1962. So that takes care of all that.
And they were all, Lucille went to the Vero School.
Yeah. They all went to Vero School, except Anne.
And when Lucille went to Vero School, she had the same trouble I did. She could not talk English.
Not a word of English.
But just no time.
No time. When Jane went to school the year later, she knew how to talk English, or speak English. Yeah, the kids learn from one another very, very fast.
very fast.
And let's see now. Yeah, they all went to Vero School. Then they went to Water Street School when they start closing some of the little schools. And I used to have to truck them to Water Street School. Then when mine new
Yeah.
school opened, they all went back there.
In the late 40s, was a member of the school board in Minot. We'll talk a little bit about Minot now. And when they built the new school, I was on the building committee. My father was for about chair of it with Mr. Benson. And in 1952, I think the first year that we opened school.
They started building
Yeah.
school. They opened it.
And on the second term, I was reelected on the school committee again, but I had to resign because there was conflicts of personality and what if I voted one way or the other way?
The superintendent would have been out one way or another.
Yeah, and the superintendent had a record that was not very favorable, so when I found out that I worked as hard as it was to build up my business to be effective that way, so then I resigned. And through the years, I was on a budget committee, but I never get too far. And at this time, I must say, you was on the selectman.
So, yeah, for 2 terms
Yeah.
of 3 years each.
First woman in the town of Minot.
First, in the state of, Bob Palmer said probably that I was the first woman selectman in the state of Maine. But he says we can't say for sure without knowing. But as far as we know,
And she was very highly respected.
I was very well liked.
Yeah.
If you ever remember Mr. the Whittington,
Willie Whittington.
what was his name?
Ran the
Anyway, they would.
woodworks at the con
He
shop
would
there.
not let or tell anybody about
His inventory.
inventory because we had to tax his inventory. But you know that I went there and I counted all the piles of wood that he had, and I went in to see him and I said, well, now you got an inventory about so much and so much. He sat at the desk and he told me everything he had. But he didn't want to talk to the other selectmen whatsoever. But he had confidence in me, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the
But I
only,
liked it. I liked it very
Yeah.
well because it was educational. You learn a lot. You meet a lot of people.
Yeah. and
but-
the only reason she quit is after, in '71, when we lost the girl into the fire, Rita.
Oh, yes.
And while we mentioned that, and also in 1957, the oldest boy died, heart condition. And then in '59, Robbie died in a schoolyard, getting on the school bus. So we just briefly throw this in. It was not always, well, just so happy we got to that. But no, one day she just said, just too much stress, and she
Enough was enough.
was enough for
The
that.
milk business was getting bigger.
Yeah.
And I had so much book work to do, so some ways you got to draw a line.
But at this time, we will mention that then the family was growing up, and there was a lot of help to me into this business. I will go back now into left off into March of '45. I bought where John is now, the home place. My father couldn't take it no more. He was health was not good enough, and I said, well, we will buy out. And in March '45, we bought the place out. Believe it or not, in June, my sister Irene came here and he says, father wants his place back in the worst way and all this and that. And I said, well, you tell him come down and buy this place for sale. And he said no, he didn't want to get back in it because there was a root here. So we had big high hopes. We started in March. There was no feed in the barn. And that time we looked at the deed here just a while ago, and there were 40 cows and 1 bull and a little piece of equipment. That's what there was at the farm we bought. And we just had. So anyway, June 17th in 1945, we moved into this house here. And before that, we moved back and forth. They were moving here and there. We won't go through all those details. And this was the beginning of this operation.
Yeah.
But when this tanner that bought when Damon died, we used to put out about 400 quarts of milk, raw milk a day. And when I came in here the first Sunday, I remember, it was on a Sunday morning, I came back from my route, I unloaded, the dairy hooked onto everything had been gone. And I counted, and I didn't even had put out 200 quarts of milk that day. But my courage was not hurt, and I went to work, and kept going at it and changing. And at this time, what I had learned down to the Hood milk plant was very helpful to me. And for the quality of the milk, which was a big item. When you get on, and we get into pasteurization, and I hooked all that stuff, all hooked by myself, get into homogenizing and change equipment, get into bigger stuff, and sales get increasing a little bit at a time, not much, a little at a time, and help was always a problem. And then I can recall in 1960, January 1st, I bought Fernwood Dairy in Auburn. It was for sale, but they didn't sell 200 quarts of milk a day. But that gave me a hole in get into town. And I stayed on that route all about January 1st. Boy, was it cold that month. They had an old truck, and I kept the truck. Oh, it was terrible.
30 below zero for 3 weeks in a row.
Oh, it was terrible. And anyway, I sweat that out there and try to keep the place going. And shortly after that, I'm probably missing a lot. I took over White Home. Then we get into supermarket. And talking about, then we kept increasing. The herd get to its limit. Then to start buying more milk out. And when...
And the schools went to hot lunches and milk. We were supplying all the schools around. And
plus, and we supplied miners, for instance, I think 35 years from the day one lunch program. And I always supplied mine at Mechanic Fall in Poland. And it was out for bid, but 1 year that I was a little bit over, and one guy in Poland said, no ways we're going to leave our local dairy. It was very little different. And we, as far as the milk goes, we left the glass bottles. We went to paper, plastic, and then we even had gallon glass, which was the poorest container we had around here. But believe it or not, in through the years, I'm going way ahead fast probably now.
That's all right.
And we finally then I run into myself. I had, at the time, a little back along, I had ruptured a disc in my back. That set me back a little bit. And then I had a knee problem. I don't know why. I think I wore them out running the streets or the roads of McKinney Falls. While we all get out of the truck, we would be on the run. I did anyway. I don't know why.
At least I always remember you running.
There was just a habit. I remember one winter it was so cold and I was warm, and I'd taken my jacket and I had a heavy sweater, and I looked, my sweater had frost on it. And but anyway, I liked what I was doing, and people were good, and the word get around. And it seems so we didn't have enough, but we had probably 80% of the business in McKinney Falls because we had good product, and and always, I never left this place unless I was shaving in the morning, never. And I was always dressed. Mother always kept me clean clothes every day I went out. And the appearance helped a little bit. But anyway, to cut things short, we expanded, my goodness. We was down to Gray, we was down to Mexico, Rumford, Lisbon, and
Norway, South Paris,
Bridgeton. But when we sold the dairy in 1988, lots of days we would package 16 to 18,000 quarts a day out of this place. When we announced that we was all done, we had telephone rang for 2 or 3 days. Is it true? Yeah. And while we was in that, along in the dairy, one thing that became very popular, we get into a lot of low-fat milk. It's through the years, We was in there for 42 years, so things has changed. So we had all this extra cream on hand, so we started making butter, she and I. And I remember once we went into Pennsylvania, we saw a butter churn advertised. It was hard to find anything to fit our size. But nobody made butter. They did was the big factories, great big drum. And we went down there, the thing was half rotten, but we brought it back home, and believe it or not, Leslie Jones gets some special wood from Florida or some kind, and we rebuilt the butter churn, and we used it, because a wooden butter churn has different than steel.
Different flavor.
And, anyway, so as the business kept on going, we ran into a lot more 2% milk, so we had this cream. And I can remember on Wednesday, the dairy did not operate. And that's when we went in Wednesday morning. I used to and make butter, the temperature got to be just right. You ever made butter, Esther?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing 24 10-gallon cans of cream looking at us
Oh my.
at one
word.
time. And we would start. I'd start in there around 4 o'clock or so. She'd come in a little later. I get to think. All we could put at one time in this churn was 3 10-gallon cans. That was better than the first one. The first one went hell just one, and we was improved. But everything was molded by hand. We salted it, and that was the hottest item we had. That
Oh,
was
that's,
that's the first thing that everybody was. We had to split it. We had no trouble, and I don't know how many pounds did we go up? 1,000 pounds, 1,200 pounds in one.
In one morning,
One morning.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah, we started at 4 o'clock, and we did it before breakfast. I remember once we had breakfast noon time. But it was all in that. And also, talk about the dairy. Back, we get into the Dunkin' Donuts. We supplied a lot of them. And we went into Portland, South Portland, Westbrook. And for, I can't remember now how long I did that. But, oh yes, probably the last 5, 6, 7 years of the dairy. I used to leave here 2 nights a week. And I used to leave here, well, I'd get up around 11 o'clock and load up my truck, which I had quite a lot, cases put in there. And I'd head for Portland and stop at the big company, pick up cheese, yogurt, whatever we didn't have here to supply our demand. And I used to get back here about, 4:30, always somebody waiting for me. Something somewhere didn't run. And I did that a long time, and it was a hard thing, but it was one place I had peace of mind. I would travel on my truck. All these years, I had just a very close escape of an accident, but otherwise than that, I get picked up once or twice. But I was lucky. The guy that I took off from that got picked up 3 times in 1 week. That took care of him. But I used to go to 4, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I had 5 Dunkin' Donuts. Then one day they called up and they wanted me to go to the old orchard. I said, no, I can't do it. No, it's just too much traveling. And but I kind of enjoyed that. I had a truck on my van that had so much mileage, but it always ran good. And when I went down there and it opened, they had these big coolers like they have in schools. And sometimes, things were all tumbled up. I would never find fault. I'd straighten everything out. And I remember when I get South Portland, that's where I picked up my coffee. Never had coffee in my life till one night I got down there. I was sick. And the guy looked at me, and it was cold, and he said, why don't you have a little coffee? I said, no, I don't drink this stuff. But then I changed my mind when I left there, and I started, and after that, I was looking forward for it. I would travel from South Portland into Westbrook, and but it was all history. And while we was all doing this, the later years of that, we bought out A.W. Walker in South Paris. In what year, do you remember?
We kept it 5
early
years,
80s, yeah, early 80s.
and we sold it in 86.
Yeah, and we took that out the mothball, or I did, and we had, Ann was up there at the time, the youngest one, and one day she said that she was not interested rather be with the cows than C and Brown wanted to buy it badly, so we sold it to them in 87. And so there have been a lot of changes.
But we made a lot of money when we sold A.W. Walker. Because we had started from nothing and brought it up to a good sales point.
Dan worked for Ann when you had A.W. Walker up there.
Dan who?
My son Dan.
Oh, yeah?
For 1 year. Yes, when he first graduated from high school, yeah.
And as a family, we have increased, kept up with time with equipment. Now today we plan, have been since the last 10 years, milk around 250 cows. And labor's always been a tuggle. And
We milk 250, but there's more than that, because there's always so many drivers.
about 300, yeah.
But just as many young stocks.
Yeah.
Right now, I would say we got somewhere around probably 550 to 600 heads altogether, all different sizes. And like this year, we had a very terrible year on hay due to the weather, worst I ever seen. But we still put in 10,000 bale of first crop, probably chop another couple of thousand on the ground sometime because we had no more room for mulch hay, get rid of it. And then we had a booming year on corn due to the light soil, and we had rain for that, and the corn, and we weighed. Well, I always have to keep track of things very close for the government, how much we get per acreage, and we come out with around 7,000 tons of corn. I don't know how much haylage we put in. I can't quite remember that. But see, years ago when they came out, they call it the program. What is it? Nutrient program.
Nutrient management program.
Yeah. In this, it consists, we had to take, you wouldn't believe it, we went through, both of us, to take a test, pass a test to have our license for it. This way I can control where I put my manure, and we keep track of it, and how much we harvest.
And where to plant and what to plant.
Yeah. In this way, they don't have to come in and interfere. You know, our license was good 5 years. I think we went three times to get past the test. Because it was for high school.
And college people.
And we
Roland was there passing her test. And on the second test, I think we missed it by 2 points. And she told the guy, she said, do you know how hard it is for them two persons that never went to college, never went to high school, to try to pass that test?
But we managed.
But the third time we made it.
Well, we had
That's
a
great.
book to study it, and but
And then the third test was the same as the first test.
the second was a different one.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
And the third test is so,
So that would be.
that was a little bit easier.
But, you know, talking about these testing, how about some of the awards that you have gotten through from your...
Oh yes, we
yeah.
forgot all about
How
that.
about the awards?
Oh boy. Okay, let's start on the award. What's the first
The
thing?
first award was the
For,
Junior Chamber of Commerce, the Young Farmer Award.
yeah, that was in what year?
I don't know, you look it up.
1955.
In
Okay.
1955. They was it 55?
Yeah,
No, something happened. Remember after the boys? When
after the boy died, 57.
Well, yeah,
But
57.
the plaque says 55 on it.
Oh, well, whatever. Anyway, so we was three of us competing. I had helped. I got to bring this up because there was myself. There was Robert Waterman on Sabatis. There was farming too, also, and farm equipment. And then there was Nathan Morris up in Turner. Was related with the Briggs and married one Steve Briggs' sister. And so, being the Frenchman, and no, I hadn't been in the business. Well, these people took over their family operation. So the words was that my chance was very slim. Well, what I had accomplished. Because when we fill out the application, that's what we put down, and that's what these people looked at, what you had accomplished. And I won. And this Nathan Morris never got over it. He never got over it. He always, times he sees me, he likes to rub me. So a while back, I was into Delectos. I ran to it. He's retired now. He don't work no more. And he always rubbed. Well, he said, here comes the millionaire miner. And I looked at him. And I says, what an insult. He said, what do you mean? I said, what plus?
Multi.
Multi. Millionaire, not millionaire. I said multi.
Then they
Shut
shut
him
up.
right up.
Shut him right up. Never said a word after that.
Then we got the award.
That was the junior. Now that was Farmer of the Year
No, for deficiency award.
for deficiency.
That was a
award.
national award.
Yep.
Yeah, and that came from Ford Company. Yeah, what year was that?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Is that on the
Eh,
wall though?
No, I don't
No,
think.
it isn't. Ann was a little girl like 2 years old.
She was born when.
And she's 40. That's 40 years in 1960. Must be in 1964.
And that by Charlie Eastman came in here and he says, fill up these forms. It was for crops, what you grew and how much crops you grew, how many crops hay you cut on, and your fertility program and all this and that. And believe it or not, we made it for it was a national affair.
Yeah.
And that thing
That
there.
was the Ford Foundation Award.
Yeah, we put a party on up to 200
Stikinos,
Sakino Award,
up to 200 people.
people that pick up the tab. There were $2,000 award to any organization that we chose to on agriculture, which went to Orono up there at this
University of Maine.
And there was quite excitement at that party. There was
A lot of farmers came.
yeah, we invited all the family we
All,
knew.
everybody we
Yeah,
knew.
yeah, and we was young then. Oh, she
No.
looked like.
Let
You
me
see that second picture
The
there?
second picture.
Just faded away.
That was
That-
at the Ford Foundation Award.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
I was
With
young.
her black hair, boy, wow, we're
And
young,
then let's see,
young.
what was the other one?
Then we won the forage, what they call it.
Oh, that was Farmer of the Year
Yeah, but then
for the state of Maine, and then we went to,
the first one,
yeah, then 50 years later, we won it the second time.
Yeah.
Two of them. And, let me see, then you went to Eastern States,
Mhm.
and we met President Nixon, because he was there at that time, in the state of Maine building, all expenses paid. So, that was
we
pretty
left here on a Friday morning. We had a handful of all tickets for a whole week. We got there, the banquet was Friday night. And after the banquet, we roamed, that was Friday. That Saturday, we roamed a lot around here and
good.
there.
Eastern States, that was big, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
you see all we could see. The Sunday morning, we of course get up early and look around at what there was. And Sunday noon, we look one another.
Let's go home.
Let's go home. We both agree, let's go home.
Let's
It
go
was
home.
too much for us.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah. But you know, one of the award we went, we went up there. There was a state award we won and then we went with Phil Andrews,
To the New England one.
to the New England one, up to Eastern States.
We
That's the
came,
first time we went there.
we came in second in New England that
Yeah.
time.
Oh, my.
And this Phil Andrew, it was such a, it helped
Such
to
a
us.
nice guy,
You know,
yes.
he kind of loosened us up a little bit, and knew he was older, and he ran the Freiburg Fair. Now his son is in charge up there, and he used to have a large dairy farm up there at the Freiburg one time, and so that's some of the excitement we had.
Then we won it again in 2000 for the second time. But then that time we sent Richard to Eastern States
Oh, nice.
because we was too old to walk and do so much walking. And then, was it a year or so later, we had a nice award from the state, from Maple Grove Cemetery. Because he was just appointed on Board of Trustees, and we had done a lot and got a nice award from that.
And also, a year ago, we got it from the Grange,
From the Grange,
for the
that was nice.
Yeah.
That was very, very
Dairy
nice.
of the Year for the Grange.
Yeah. Farm Family of the Year.
I can always remember now when the D6 plow landed in the town of Minot, West Minot. I can remember very well. And going back now, I would kind of remember, we came in 33, the first spring. I think in 1934, the first town meeting I attended at the Grange Hall, West
In
Minot,
West Minot.
and I can always remember Mr. Greer used to have a lot to say.
Lot to say.
And I was thought, as a youngster, it was quite interesting. And I've been to many town meetings, not all of them, but I've been to many of them.
After we got married, he joined the Grange. And I think we are a Grange member of Center Mile Hill for 60 years now.
Yeah,
Oh, my.
in that vicinity.
That vicinity.
Yeah.
I think that there's an award coming for us.
We had a ward quite many years ago, 50 years,
Yeah.
and always been. We never went to
Never
the Grange.
attended much, but
Yeah,
them days you
because-
had insurance, Grange insurance.
And in order to have the insurance back then, you
Yeah,
had
had
to
if you're in the
belong to
Grange.
Grange.
Yeah, I went in the Grange a very young age. I wasn't even here then. Huh? I don't think so.
But when we
Yeah.
went farming the first time,
Yeah.
well, what else is there?
one of the, going way back, you mentioned John quite a bit, and Andrew, and George, but you did not mention the names of your sisters.
No, I don't think so. Well, let's talk about sisters. Because Rita was the oldest one, and Rita went through minor school and Mechanic Fall High School. I think they all did, all three. We're talking about that. And Rita went to college further, and she was bookkeeper for some
Beer company.
beer company into the city. And talk about that, I can remember when I worked the Hoods that time, that's where she was working. And she didn't get out to work till around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I'd get out earlier than that, and I had to sit there. In the meantime, when I get up to the house up there, it was winter months, and I had to go cut some apple trees because that would burn better to keep the house warm. Irene went through high school and college,
Yeah.
and
I think they went to what? Auburn Main School of Commerce?
Yeah.
Bliss, I can't remember
Okay.
which one it is.
Yeah. And Irene had a job in the finance company.
Personal finance company?
Yeah, she worked there a long
Long
time. Irene was very, had a lot of, Irene had the,
Personality.
yeah, a lot of personality, always did. And she had a lot to do with Center Minor Grange when they ran that up there. And Arthur Harris always would like to head her, but he somehow didn't make it. I remember Arthur saying that to me himself. And Irene talked about it too. And then Teresa, she went through high school, and then she went through nursing school at St. Mary's. And she stayed, well, she was out when she had the family, but then she went back, and I think that she was 35 years there in one stretch, and she was night supervisor. I know, because I was in the hospital at one time when she was in charge of the ward where I went. By the way, I had 4 right knee replacements. I just had 1 on the left. And so I remember one time going in there, and she said, well, you come to our hospital and I take good care of you. Well, somehow I'm something hard to work with. But anyway, I'm not interested no more. Talking about hospital, when I had knee problem, I had a friend of mine, Smith Monmouth, a dairy farmer, and he had gone to Portland to this Dr. Booth, and he had come out so well. So I said it's worthwhile in Portland to go. And I had to deal with this Dr. Marcotte, which was not working good at the time. Later I went to Dr. Moody. But anyway, I went down to Portland. In the meantime, between the appointment and getting my time appointment, I had did something to my shoulder. It wasn't good at all. So I get down there and I says to him, would you check my shoulder first? He looked at that, and he took X-ray in there, and he says, we got to take care of that first. He said, you got a ruptured rotor cuff there, and something else is torn, my left shoulder. So he said, I said, okay. It was in June, I believe. So we make arrangement for surgery. So Friday morning we went down. You can now Lucille took it down there. They had no room, but they said, when you get down to surgery, we'll find a bed for you. So you undress, throw everything in a plastic bag, and away I went within Johnny, whatever you call him, and so it wasn't too long, I was out. But they had trouble, they could not get the tubes, they don't do that no more now, for what they call
Incubate?
Not incubate, but something, so when you're operating, you don't choke, something of that nature. Well, they had 2 specialists there, and they both tried, and when they're doing that, they did something, and it was bleeding. So the only thing they had to do, they had to jump me awake because I was choking on my own. And so they jumped me awake. I remember looking at the clock, 10 o'clock, and at first I felt my shoulder, and the nurse said we could not do it, we had complication. So they docked a minute to see if they were going to reschedule me for later in the day, and the doctor said we don't do that. So they say, go dress up, and they call her up, come get me. Well, after anesthesia, you sit on the chair, putting the stockings on, and you would fall forward. So they come out and say, you got to hurry a little bit, we need the room. And finally we left there, and that was on get home Friday afternoon, and never got it done. I lived with it all my life. And believe
He
it or
went to
not,
bed, and he slept, and he slept, and
slept
he slept.
Saturday, slept Sunday, and then Monday I was ready to go out in the field again. And that's the odd things. And now another thing I'd like to mention, after finally got in that there, I think the following year or so, he bought the Leland place. It was under Federal Land Bank.
Yes.
And we went, Lucille, this last summer, and dug out all the records of my father through the years. I want to know what time we had gone on College Street. And then she found out that after he bought that, he didn't have enough money to pay taxes, which was $100-some-odd. But then he found enough to pay for the taxes. But what I was driving at Everett Leland now was owned that because he lost it. And then he worked for my father. Now listen to that. That was quite a walk back with Hemond's garage. That's where the racetrack is. The house was there.
The house, I can remember
the
that.
house. And he walked all the way to the farm. And he used to drive horses. In the summer, he worked in a hayfield lot for $1 a day. $1 a day. And that is right to mount. I'm telling you the way it was. $5 a week. And walked that distance. And talking about walking, also he had two, his wife wasn't there. She left him, I guess, at a very young age because his father brought up the kid, Walter. I can remember because we used to roam around there while we owned the place. And there was Buster and Gwenny. And they came to school. That was quite a hike for them to come out all the way from the road right down to the Verrill School. It was, I would think Atkinson's school was a bit of a toss-up between the two. But anyway, they came there, and boy, I tell you, there was just no money. You could see that they were. And one thing I can remember, also at the Verrill School, there was Ella Hawkins. She lived almost to the Grange Avenue. There used to be a little house there where Goodwin had. That's probably before your days. I can remember the house at Hawkins. And she was a tiny little thing in Supper and she'd come walk all the way to the Verrill School. I remember one time she came up there was a blizzard, and the school was closed, and she turned around. I don't know how come. I had one down, I think, lit the stove or something, and the school was called off, and she walked all the way. That was a long way for a little teeny girl. But the teacher used to bring something for her to eat, because all there was was a slice of bread and a cookie. That's all it was.
Because I can remember when my mother taught at that school, and she had Ella probably in the older grades.
Yeah.
But when she used to teach there, she used to take milk every morning for the kids that didn't have breakfast, and she gave them milk every morning.
I know this. But after I left school, then there was quite a lot more came to this school. Out there where the doctor lives there, there's a Scribner, I believe, lived in there, and there were quite a few kids in the school. I don't know where they all came from.
And then when she was teaching there, she had the Scribners and the Harrises,
Yes, down
all
this,
the Harris boys.
So there be a big change. We had a hired man when we was on the farm growing up, and we had a female dog. In the spring of the year, we had a lot of business dogs, and the guy says to us, "We'll have some fun tonight." And John and I, we was, old enough. I don't know how old we was then, probably 14, 15, I don't know how old. And so we get the dogs in the garage. We had to be careful that we get bite. And then he had bunch of cans he had picked up, and he had some strings. So one of us would take the dog and pat it close to the outside door, pat him right nicely, and he would tie the string in a can or two behind. Then we had some turpentine, and the turpentine would go under the tail, and we opened the door, and they never came back. I can remember a day growing up that I don't know, it was I don't know, in between up there, that everything I ate went right through me. So finally they took me to the doctor. I could, before we start milking cows in the afternoon, 4:30 or some, we used to go in the house, pick up a don, whatever we could find kicking around, a soda. All I had to do, and before I get to the barn, I had to pull my pants down. They'd go right through me. So apparently I got really skinny, dehydrated, and they had to take me to the doctor. And the doctor said they checked that I should not be getting up before 8 o'clock in the morning, and that they had to restrict. Apparently I was working more ambition, and
his capacity.
And it lasted less than a week. My father came in one morning, and he could put quite a tantrum on. He had quite a temper, and thing went wrong in the barn, and then he started sputtering about. I was still in bed and I overheard it, and it never happened again. I never stayed in bed again after that. I had too much. But in through the years, we were so busy in the business all the time.
Yeah, it was business,
bus-
business, all the time.
And we really had no time to talk about our private life through all the years. So now after the dairy went, it gave us more time to talk.
And he goes
Yeah.
back in his young days.
Yeah, well, sometimes I like to talk about it. Like when I worked to Hoods, to me, now,
Joe Brown?
Joe Brown came in there when Old Tavern sold,
On top of the hill.
Hatch, yeah.
Yeah, Merrill had.
Merrill Hatch, so Merrill Haven sold to Hoods. That was about my last of being in there. And Joe Brown came in onto there. He met me there because he talked about it. We talked about it many times. And to me, it's such a dream. I was getting in there. I was so young and so small. I weighed just 125 pounds. And to advance so fast responsibility, they had to have, I don't want to brag, but they had to have confidence in me to do this. And, but still it looked like a dream. I was be working all night there, and I just don't know.
Because Joe Brown said after he left, it took 2 men to replace him.
I was busy.
We didn't know that. He told us.
But when on all these, they would put 30 cases, they were all glass bottle. They were heavy. I weighed 125 pounds. And there was 30 cases there. What helped me a lot, and I look at that, any amount there was to 30, I knew what it was. I didn't have to figure it. There was 15 cases, 180, I'll never forget it. 17,204.
Yeah.
25,300. And I never forgot it. So that was a big help for me.
Yeah.
I remember coming in there one night, and I was tired. I probably didn't have much sleep in there. And upstairs, I had the keys for everywhere. I've had just 1 or 2 attempts there. People come in, I never kept the place locked up. So I was all alone in that place. And one guy came in one night, he was drunk. He wanted a quart of buttermilk. I'm glad I gave it to him. I let him go out and lock the door. That night I came in and I went up in the sales office. They had a couch there. And I said, Jesus, well, I'll just lay down a few minutes. And a few minutes, the door rattled. And I looked out, the first root man was in. I had nothing done. I had taken care of inventory, and the first route without a fellow named Pete Goodwin went up South Bear, but they were all very good about it. They didn't want to know what happened. And I said, well, things went wrong. I didn't want to reveal, but it never happened again. It never happened again. And yes, I really enjoy I just love what I was doing. And one thing growing up I missed so much, I love milk. And how much cheaper could it be? The father brought in a dip of milk, and that's for the day. It said sell the rest for 2, 3 cents, 4 cents a quart. It's gone up a little more through the year. And when I got here, I'll tell you, after I got married, I drank.
We drank milk.
And I thought, we was growing up, and we was working beyond our capacity. My mother was a very good cook, and we had always plenty to eat, but that milk was.
But it was 1 glass of milk, period.
Yeah, that's it. That's all it was. Yeah.
How many of your children helped with the dairy after they were grown up?
On the farm up here, India, everybody but Andy. Andrew.
No, our children.
Which one now?
Well, now you were
Use
saying that everybody but Andy in your family,
Yes.
as you were growing up,
Yes.
at one time or another, worked on the
everybody
farm.
worked out there. The girls, Rita not as much. She stayed in the house more. But Irene and Teresa worked very hard out. They did boys' work.
Yeah.
And George always worked with me when he first started. When he went to school, he didn't talk much English, but he came with me. And otherwise than that, John, somehow, I don't know why, John was not so rugged. And somewhere the girls, Irene would still say, well, John always had the easy job. No, I never noticed that, but they did. But the girls milked cows by hand. They went and get cows out in the pasture and did all this and that. And you know where the cows were at milking time? Way up on the other end.
Yeah.
Way up on the other end of the hunt place.
Sure.
And I can recall one time I was on a Saturday night, and my aunt, my father's sister, used to come quite often, Jake. And it used to be Emu Jake was mayor of St. Louis, and he's a cousin of mine. Well, anyway, so when we came down with the cows, there was a ravine where there was water, and sometimes we had to be careful we'd lose so many because they'd go for the water. But I think of that so. But I'm glad it turned out this way because I would have never bet my
No.
honeybee. Sweet as honey, as busy as a bee. Yeah. But talking about her through the years, because we were very busy at times. And if I was short of somebody in the dairy running the paper machine or the glass filler, and when we ran glass filler, put the bottles in and wash and automatically, everything went automation. And all I had to do was come up to the house, and she'd always, with a smile, whenever there was a little baby.
Oh yeah, I had one in a little box, and I put her on a little table next to me. I could see her, and the noise of all the machines, she'd sleep all the time.
And one of us down in the milking cows, and she'd always come down and fill in. Now, not everybody would say that. They'd say, well, I can't go. And so she'd been a big part of my...
But there was the oldest girl, now Lucille, was just as much a mother to Richard as I was. Because she took care of him. Because Robbie was born just 1 year later. And you had all you could handle, But Lucille's just like a mother to all of them.
And then as they get older, they get on the milk truck.
Yeah.
And she'd go on a Sunday till the one could drive.
Yeah, because
Sunday
they couldn't drive.
After we hit so far, then we split the route in two. We get bigger, more territory. And helped to have a day off for them days, going 7 days a week. And
I would drive, and the girls would deliver the milk. And they liked it. They all liked it.
I was going to say, all of your children worked on them.
Yeah, everybody worked. There was never no problem. And the oldest boy there, which probably I missed the most because he was always in the band to try to do something to help me get up in the saddle and pitch down to the silage. Or if I head out in the field, you would see him in the stone wall or watching me.
Yeah.
So, that was an awful blow to me. It took me all winter to get over it. And, but, things messed way along.
Now, you were talking about earlier about Anne giving the cows injections and so on. Tell us a little bit about how Anne has helped the veterinarians over the years and how that part of the medicine that you have to give to cows has changed.
Well, let's put it this way. Anne has been spoiled from day one. She never got on the school bus. She had to take her to school. And I can see why. Mother has always been an extra mother. And then as she grew up, they went through school. Anne was very good in school all there. But then when she left A.W. Walker up there, after she got done school, she went up there. Then she came in here. And Anne always quite a hand around the cattle. And she started to, I guess, take care of them. She milked for quite a while. She don't milk no more now. And she knew them all. And then we had, I think I heard her mention before, had this veterinarian, this woman that come from Turner. And they were a very good friend, and she taught her a lot of things.
Lots and lots of
Lots of things. And Anne is very dedicated. Whatever she's going to do is going to be just right.
Just right.
And so she became quite helpful to learn to give IV to cows, animal, and
She can calve out a cow.
yeah, I can remember one of the time that I had one knee replaced. One of my knees, I went to the hospital, and they always say, well, 4 or 5 days. One of the knees, I was there 3 weeks and 2 days. I'll never forget it. That poor woman had to come down there every night. Every afternoon. It's
She
true.
probably didn't have to, she wanted to.
I wanted to.
Well, yeah, I don't know what.
One morning, telephone rings.
Oh, yes.
5 o'clock?
That's one of the last job.
Yeah, 5 o'clock. Can you come down? I don't feel very good. So I come down. Of course, you had to dress
Yeah.
and go down. Oh, it took you so long.
Well,
But, he wasn't feeling, he was sick.
well, they had put me on
Yeah.
morphine, and I had lost, and I had no air in the hospital.
No.
I was just couldn't live.
They had to move him.
Yeah. And then
When you're used to
one-
outdoor air all the time, you get in the hospital,
Yeah, when that morning she come down, she fed me, and just soon doctor come in, when all I did, poof,
everything went out.
I was in tough shape. Then they put me into what they call
What do they call it?
they had a quarter, a place where you can go out and eat, a division, part of the old hospital.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then there was a lot of air there. There was a lot of room. It was not crowded.
Not crowded.
Crowded. And
Nice
then,
air, and the meals were brought up to you. And
oh yeah.
you would leave your bed, you go to the table and eat. It's altogether different.
Yeah, it was here. Then it, but I don't know, it was a few days that they put him on morphine. I didn't know what the hell was going
Oh
on.
no, he was talking to his dead cousins.
But I-
Roland come over to see him and talk to him, and he didn't even know she had come.
Oh my
I
goodness.
really had a hard time. But that was the last time I went in.
Yeah.
That's the last time.
Yeah,
Last time went on that knee was the fourth time.
yeah.
Boy, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
But,
Then after he's here, it takes him a long time to recover. Takes him a long time to
well, I
recover.
fight too much. I don't know.
I think if I said one of the knees, you know, he was on crutches, he'd get in his tractor, and he'd drive the tractor all day, and once he got out, then he got stuck, and the crutches, you know, would sink in the mud there.
I had time to get out where I was, period.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
remember once coming back and recuperating that, and we had a major trouble with our pasteurizing unit into the dairy, and I had to work so much to find. We call the companies and tell you they do this and that, and I think it took a whole week. We could not control the temperature of pasteurization. We had to control it at 168, and it wouldn't stay there. When it goes too low, then it diverts, goes back in the receiving tank. Oh, I worked so much on that, and I'd take that crutches and I'd heave them on one side, and I was no shape. But finally, I found the trouble. One night I came in, I was smiling like this, and
Because it's always got to be a simple thing.
Yes. How many farms have you bought up in Minot to incorporate into Hemond's Dairy? The farms.
Verrill,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
Rowbottom,
that's Foot to Hill.
foot of the hill there, and then
There was one junk in front where Richard lived that belonged to somebody else.
Yeah.
There used to be a house that had burned. Like
and
West,
then
West
on
Minot.
Buckland Bridge there,
Yeah.
West Minot.
West Minot.
Dorothy Bridges,
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
4.
But the Wilson place came with this here.
Yeah, Wilson Place came
Just to
with it.
show you how the value has changed since 1945,
5.
when we bought this here with, I don't know, 30 heads of livestock, very little machinery, my old Alice Chalmers tractor, and didn't have a pickup for the route. He kept that. And with the other farm down below, it included how many acres down there? 200?
140 and 50, yeah, 200,
200
190,
acres.
200 acres.
And bought this whole shebang, the milk business and all, for
$11,000.
$11,000.
And now, you know, you don't go
You
to
don't buy a cow for that.
My goodness, no.
$11,000. Just to show, and I could have bought neighbor here for chicken feed.
Where Marge Downing, we could have
I
bought
kicked
that.
so much. I could have bought that for $300. It would hook right onto me. Then I could have bought Paul Jones with a big field I've used for years. I could have, Bill Crane owned that last one, and a couple $1,000. But I
But
had
we
enough.
was so busy in the milk business, and we was not that many cows, and just didn't have time.
But that
Well,
was
I
it.
thank you very
This is
much.
wonderful.
Yes.
Maybe I
Yes.
talked too much. I don't know.
No.